There is a trigger warning on this episode as we discuss really heavy topics like self-harm and depressive ideation. Discretion is advised. This is Around the Farm, the podcast about all things ag. I'm your host, Clint Schaffer, and today we're going to be joined by Alecia Stuann of Raising Princess Warriors and talking about some of the ups and downs around farming and how we can help those who are struggling. Stay tuned. Alicia, thank you for joining us here today on Around the Farm. How about you give our listeners and viewers here a little introduction?
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm Alecia Stuann. I have quite an interesting background. I grew up on a 2,500 acre farm in southern Iowa. So that's how my rural roots really got started. Met and married my husband. He works for a farm here in west central Illinois, and I'm maybe kind of sort of a farm wife. I work from home with our 4 daughters, and I help out in the fields when they need me. And I am a mental health advocate. That whole journey started when I began to struggle with postpartum depression after our oldest was born, and it's just kind of grown into this huge platform that I have on my own space on the internet. Instagram and TikTok is really where I'm active.
Yeah, I mean, you have a very big following, I know, on Instagram. I've been following you for quite some time now. And what is your handle? Raising Princess Warriors, right?
Yes, Raising Princess Warriors.
Yeah, and I seen you just cross the 10,000 follower threshold there the other week. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
You know, I think it's an interesting story on how we find ourselves here today. Actually, Alicia and I, we don't live too far apart, and we were actually attending a local FieldView employee's wedding, and you know, started discussing your channel and just within marketing here, and I thought it'd be a great opportunity to bring you on the show and really talk about some of these pieces that that you show a lot of passion around. So I guess, how did you first decide to start Raising Princess Warriors? How did you decide to start that channel?
So my passion really came from when I was going through the thick of postpartum depression. I felt so alone. I felt like I was the only one who walked through that journey. I didn't know postpartum depression was a thing. There was no education or resources on it. And my passion is to, even if I can just change one person's life, that I have done what I feel is my calling. And that's where my passion, why I started sharing. It's kind of evolved into where the platform it is now, that's primarily focusing on mental health in general. I started out really focusing on maternal mental health, and it just is, I just want to help save lives because I almost lost my life due to depression.
Well, yeah, I mean, that looking at the mental health aspect, I mean, not only with the maternal side, but also, looking at the rural ag side as well. I know you put a lot of focus on there, and that's been a very important conversation that folks are really starting to have. And I think it's thanks to people like you, Alicia, that have really stood up to really voice and put a voice behind it, because I think it is it's a hard conversation to have for a lot of folks, and I think a lot of times people don't want to talk about that. So hats off to you, I guess, for starting that and starting to bring awareness to that.
Thanks. What's shocking to me is when I started looking at where we're at, resources for mental health are very slim. And mental health in general is still a stigma, but especially I feel in rural and agricultural communities. And when I first started researching into rural mental health, there are a couple of statistics that really, really shocked me. The first one is that farmers and ranchers are 3.5 times more likely to commit suicide than any other occupation.
What do you think? I guess why do you think that is? I mean, is it an isolation thing? Is it a stress of just the profession? What do you feel like is the reason behind that stat?
I joke that farmers are the biggest gamblers I know. And I don't know anyone who's in farming for for the money. They're in it for passion. It's what they grew up. They literally grew up with dirt underneath their fingernails. And so when you have hard times, um, when you literally see your yearly income fall flat on its face, and you're wondering, how on earth am I going to pick this corn? How am I going to get this done? How am I going to get enough yield to pay for my bills, to pay for the inputs that they're just lost. They have no one to turn to, and there's not a support network out there for for farmers. And it's shame. They feel ashamed, and this is me putting feelings and words into people's mouths. But I feel like they feel ashamed that they should be a better farmer at. They should be better at farming. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I think it does, and I look at, I guess just I look at our own farm and see the struggles that my parents have experienced, throughout the years, whether it's droughts, whether it's floods, whether it's even just financial headaches that they had throughout, especially throughout like the '80s and whatnot. It's just a lot to shoulder, I think, for a lot of folks. I know those are a lot of stressors that I typically wouldn't have. Right, I'm not relying on the land in that sense, and so it is just seems like it's a lot, a lot to put on somebody's shoulders there.
And I think that's farmers deal with they don't have a boss. They're the boss. Everything that comes in and out of that farm depends on them, and they don't have anyone else to help carry that burden.
And one of the things you talked about was just part of how you felt, right? That really drove you to this, and I know that you've mentioned before that you were in a really tough spot and a bad spot, and it took a lot of time and effort to get out of that. What were some of the steps that you had to take, Alicia, to recognize, I guess, that something wasn't right?
I remember my oldest was about 10 months old, and I screamed at my husband, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to be here. And I got in my car and left. And I had no intention of ever coming back. And at that point, when I did come back, he's like, this is enough. You're calling your doctor. We're going to go get you help. So from there, I went, we started medication immediately. And then I've also gone through some therapy, but really talking about it in therapy to my family, to my husband, has really changed the game, because I'm no longer alone. I'm no longer fighting that battle internally. They know when I'm struggling, and they're able to say, hey, those lies your brain is telling you, that's exactly what it is. It's a bunch of lies.
And I mean, that's I think that just goes into having that support around you, having those that you love paying attention and reaching out. What are some of the signs that somebody that might be struggling with this, what are some of those signs that they could be looking for to say, this isn't right, and I need to start reaching out, or I need to start maybe looking at getting some help?
Specifically in Farmers First, if you notice someone is struggling to get their crops in or out, if they're just not acting the way they normally would, if they're not following their normal routines, their patterns, if you notice that their animals don't appear to be cared for, definitely reach out to them then. Any changes of normal routine or behavior. So if you know that Joe Smith down the road normally goes up to the coffee shop and drinks a pot of coffee with his friends, and all of a sudden he's not doing that. If they start speaking negatively a lot, like, man, this crop really just isn't worth it. Like, I should just kind of give up. I should quit. And a lot of self-deprecating talk. If they're talking negatively about themselves, and that's out of character for them, because we all know that there's some people in life that are just plain old negative. But if they're more, a change of character I would say would be our number one thing that we're going to be looking for.
Alicia, you talked about reaching out then as well, right? I mean,
Mhm.
and having that conversation. That can be hard in itself, right? I'm putting myself in those shoes of how I would approach that, and that may not be the easiest thing either.
Oh, no.
What's maybe some of the best tactics or best ways that somebody could walk up to somebody and have that conversation? Because I know I would have a lot of fear in where that conversation could go, or maybe I'm not prepared. I guess what's some advice for those folks that are reaching out?
Well, number one, be prepared for that person to be defensive because they don't want to admit that they're having problems. Um, and it just is something as simple as sending them a text. Hey, I was thinking about you. Just wanted to know that I look up to you. I admire your role in the community. Something as simple as, if you know that they're struggling, drop by a McDonald's gift card, because I know personally when I'm really, really struggling, the last thing I can do is make food for myself. I don't want to do it. And to feed my family, we eat so much takeout when I'm struggling mentally because I just can't do it. That's just one thing that I cannot handle. So and it doesn't even have to, you can write it in a note and said, hey, here, I noticed that you might be struggling a little bit. Here's a gift card for you. Slide it in their mailbox. Just simple little things. You don't necessarily have to talk to them to actually change their life.
Do you think that sometimes it could take more than one time or more than a couple times of reaching out? I mean, do you almost have to be somewhat stubborn on that side of it to continue to pursue that if you feel like something's wrong?
Yes, definitely. And that would be, at that point, I would probably start with just a text and then go on to doing something meaningful for them, to actually maybe catching them in their shop or their office and be like, hey, I know you're just not acting right. Something's going on with you. Would you like to talk about it? And sometimes they just need to sit in silence with someone to know that they're not alone. So maybe just go ride in the combine with them.
I think that's great advice there. One of the other things I would ask there on this, Alicia, is a lot of our just a lot of folks that I know, our support is our spouse, right? And they're usually the ones that are around us the most. They can see when things are changing, but sometimes I feel that being around somebody all the time, it's hard to notice change as much. Is there any advice you give to a spouse of saying, hey, these are maybe some of the things you need to look for, or maybe step back and look at things from a different perspective?
It's funny you asked me, because hi, Corey. We have another guest.
Hi.
It's funny you asked me that. I actually just recently reached out to Luke, my husband, for some advice for my Instagram channel. So this kind of ties in perfectly for that. His advice was, be yourself, because that person has so much going on within themselves. So, for example, I was extremely angry. Any instability, if I felt like I couldn't depend on him, I would become irate and just lose it. And he says, stay consistent and true to yourself. Notice, it's, again, that change of character. If they're acting out of their normal their normal self, then you should probably maybe reach out, maybe talk to them, sit down. I feel like with your spouse, you're going to be a lot more comfortable to be like, maybe back them into a corner and be like, hey, something's going on with you. We need to get to the bottom of this. Another thing he said was, work on your situation and yours alone. It doesn't matter. You can read countless books, talk to experts, search the internet, but you are the only one who knows that situation. You're the only one that's going through exactly what you're going through at that moment in time. You're keep our relationship history in mind, be ready for a change, and never frame your mindset from just one perspective. So if I'm struggling, he has to stop and look, was it something that happened with the kids? Are the kids sick? Am I freaking out about the kids? Where are we financially? Just so to be looking at it so that he can kind of step in and help take some of that anxiety and worry off of me.
I think that is a fantastic list of steps there to take. So I love hearing that. I think it sounds like you got have a great support team around you, Alicia. So that's awesome. And the other thing too, you talked about as you're growing your Instagram channel and your TikTok channel. I know one of the things that I've noticed when I'm watching your reels and different posts that you put up there, not everything is easy to listen to, right? And easy to watch. And how, I guess what I'm curious about is, how did you break into that barrier of saying, you know what? I know this may sound crazy, or this may be tough for others to hear, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say this, and I'm going to make a video about it.
I have no filter. So that would probably be a good portion of my ability to do that. But my need to help others outweighs my own shame at this point in my journey. 3 years ago, would I have been able to talk in depth about what I talk about the intrusive thoughts, about the feeling that I needed to harm myself? No. But I'm healing and I'm on a journey and I'm on medication. My medication dose is finally good. And so I'm in a place where I really can delve deep into that darkness and come out unscathed ish. So that people know. And I know you said the reels. I know what ones you're talking about, the intrusive thoughts one. And it's because people have no idea that those thoughts, like, it's taboo. You think that those thoughts are actually you and you're going to do those things. I broke that barrier because someone needed to, someone had to. The comments and messages that I get saying that they didn't know that anyone else went through that. That's why. And the more comments and stuff that I receive, the more important I realize that it is for me to continue to share them, because everyone needs to know that they're not alone in this journey.
Alicia, that is awesome. Again, I commend you for that. I think you are the service that you're doing is much needed. I think it's great that you're shining light on a topic that's tough for a lot of us to talk about, and it takes folks like you to really shine that light and to bring that to the forefront and bring that to the attention of everybody there. So, Alicia, you talked about growing up on a farm as well. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So like I said earlier on, I grew up on a 2,500 acre farm in southern Iowa. That farm is still operational today. My parents and my brother and sister actually run that operation. That's quite the diverse operation. They have the farm side, and then they have a livestock side. They have about 300 head of ewes right now. Actually, when I was there, they had about 2,000, so they've slimmed down a little
Wow.
bit. Yeah, I grew
Wow.
up showing sheep as well,
Yep.
so it was a show stock flock. And then so they have the show stock. They have 4 car parts stores, and they also are a precision ag dealer and a tile plow dealership. And fun fact, I worked for them for about 10 months. My husband and I went back to join the operation. And if you work with family and agriculture, you know that either it's really, really good or not so much. And my husband and I decided that our family relationships were more important than the business, and we chose to leave the operation. Um, in that time period from graduating college, I sold seed for 6 years. I worked as a precision ag tech, and now I am in a marketing role for a large ag dealer here in West Central Illinois.
Wow. Well, I tell you what, not only do you have a vast experience within the ag industry here, but your family farm is quite diversified. So I always talk about I think that's one of the things that I'm seeing more and more of. Are farms trying to diversify out into different endeavors, and especially as family comes back into the farm, right?
Yep.
Folks bringing different things in, and but I don't know if I've talked to anybody with quite that diversification right there. Like you got like car parts stores and livestock, the whole. I mean, that's the whole 9 yards.
It
So
really is. So I actually, when I growing up, I was homeschooled, and we did not get summer break. We got harvest break so that my parents could have free child labor.
oh yeah.
Sorry, mom and dad, if you're actually listening to this. But that's just the way we grew up. And my dad always believed in minimizing your risk. And that's how he minimized it, was as the kids started coming back into the operation, he started adding different streams of income that would counterbalance each other, because, when farming is high, farming is good. And when farming is low, people start buying more parts and repairing their own equipment, and just makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good strategy, and good strategy to keep you busy, and good strategy for financial stability as well. So, no, absolutely. You talk about your farming background, coming from a farm over in Iowa, married to a farmer. I mean, I gotta know, is it auger wagon, grain cart? I mean, where do you stand on this crazy debate?
It's grain cart. No questions asked. It's grain cart. And every time he says, I need someone to come run the auger cart, I'm like, well, I can't help you because I don't know what that is.
Okay, all right, fair enough. I stand firmly on the auger wagon side, but I'm feeling more like I'm standing on an island right now. Well, hey, on another note here, we're rolling into the holiday season, and I was just curious, as we roll into Thanksgiving and Christmas and all the other holidays that are around this time of year, what do you look forward to the most during this holiday season?
I'm a Thanksgiving girl. Thanksgiving was always my mom's holiday and my grandma's holiday, and we normally have, I don't know, 35 or 40 people at my mom's house, and it just is, we have a big old turkey dinner, and then we eat a whole bunch of pies. Most of the time we have more pies than people there, because everyone brings 2 or 3 pies, and then we play cards all afternoon. It's the best holiday.
Nice. That sounds like just a good, relaxing time right there. And I would say we do very similar things. We eat too much, and we sit around the kitchen table, and we throw a little euchre actually. So we're in
nice.
that card playing as well during that time of year. So.
Nice.
Well, Alicia, I do want to say thanks again for coming on here to have this conversation and really, again, bring awareness just to the importance of mental health in rural areas, putting that focus even on farmers during this time of year, a really stressful time of year as we look into harvest. So I do want to just say thanks again for taking time out of your busy schedule to sit down and talk to me about this. As folks are looking at, maybe reaching out and trying to find, different places to go, do you have any advice on any resources or tools that folks can use?
So the first one that I would suggest specifically for farmers, there is a farmer crisis hotline. And that phone number is 1-800-FARM-AID or 1-800-327-6243. The suicide hotline is 1-800-273-8255. That is 100% confidential. You call them, you say, I'm struggling, I need help. And they just talk you down. And then the text is you text home to 741-741.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for sharing that, Alicia. I mean, that I think having those tools at your fingertips and being able to contact somebody, I think, especially when you're in a need of help. I mean, I think it's great to have those numbers right at your fingertips there.
It is. And that brings me, you are never alone. You reach out for help. There's always someone there to grab your hand to pull you up when you feel like you're drowning.
You talk about never being alone, and that I know DeKalb Asgrow put together a campaign that no one farms alone, right? And it's really looking at this the same topic. And we had a farmer share his story, right, about a friend that he lost, and it's one of those where, again, I think the more that we can bring this into the light and bring this to the attention of everybody, so that we can reach out and help those in need.
And it's funny that you say this, because that brings me back to a thought that I was having when I was thinking about everything that we were going to be talking about here. I've never seen, the agriculture community is amazing. My family has been affected. We lost my 3-year-old nephew last fall to a tragic farm accident. And the community was amazing. They gathered they moved soybeans for my parents. They came and they set up and they took down and they brought food. And it just amazes me how much the farm community actually cares about each other. And it would just be such a beautiful thing if we saw someone struggling beforehand, and doing that giant act of kindness would completely change their life. So instead of attending a funeral, you might be actually saving their life by creating that huge community group.
I think that's a great outlook on that, and hopefully we can continue to bring awareness around that to hopefully save those lives and drive that community. So, and one more time for the viewers out there, where can they hear you? Where can they find you? What are all your handles at the different platforms there?
I am on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, and my handle is @RaisingPrincessWarriors.
And it looks like you have one of those Princess Warriors sitting in your lap right there, right?
I do. This is our third of 4.
Third of 4. Well, cool. Well, thanks again for joining, and hopefully maybe we can have you on down the road a little bit.
Of course, anytime.
So I'd like to give a really special thanks to Alicia for joining us today and having a conversation that's not necessarily the easiest to have. Also, we ask that if you like this podcast, be sure to like the podcast, subscribe, and ring the bell to get notified each and every time that we push out new content. Also, remember, Around the Farm is sponsored by Climate FieldView. And with that, we'll see you around the farm.